Greetings! I, Tantisnar Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome, one and all. Once again, we're diving into Golarion, Pathfinder role-playing games world today. You're joining me over on Twitch. Hey, Twitch, you're over there. Or if you're joining me on YouTube later on, hey, YouTube. You folks on YouTube, please, remember my thing. Please appease the dark algorithm and like, subscribe, ring the bell, and all that kind of stuff. My question, all of you out there today, wherever you're at, have you dealt with Thuvia? That's the nation we're going to be talking about today. So we've kind of gone across the northern part of Grund a little bit with videos I've done. So if you want to check out the other ones for the other countries in this area, it's the trifecta now. We're finishing it off with Thuvia, which is an interesting place because it's a nation of city-states. But it's also a nation of a territory that is vastly inhospitable. And it's a nation that gets all of its money and wealth and power from one thing. Sun Orchid Elixir. We're going to dive into that today. But of course, with most things, most videos I do, I like to start off with sources. Some sources that I can throw out to you that'd be good for you to look into if you want to do additional research beyond what I'm giving you here. Basically, hey, go check out these books that are Pathfinder books if you want to do deeper research. I like suggesting this because I do encourage doing more research. Hey, I like encouraging that. The Campaign Settings book from original Pathfinder 1st edition, and of course the Inner Sea World Guide are two great places to start out with for some basic information. The Lost Omen World Guide will be your place to get the updates to Thuvia in 2nd edition. Really, that's the main three places we can look at for a lot of this, along with some small adventures and stuff like that. But those three are your main sources I recommend. So let's talk about Thuvia a little bit here, because it is a fairly interesting nation. It's on the Inner Seas, northern coast. The northern Inner Sea, on the north part of Grund, South Inner Sea. Yeah, north part of Grund, South Inner Sea, situated between Osirian, the ancient nation, and of course, Rahadum, who's anti-god. There you've got Thuvia. And this export, Sun Orchid Elixir, has controlled the nation for the last 3,000 years. Because they are the only ones that can manufacture it. What does it do? Simply put, it reverses aging. Now, effectively, if we look at the nation as a whole, it's 5 city-states that have formed an alliance and made one effective nation. Talk about it historically. But that's what you look at it when you look on the outside. They do put on a united front against enemies and for various reasons. And effectively, the capital is Merit. Effectively. One of the city-states. But we'll get into all of this, as we do have to dive into Thuvia a little bit deeper. So, let's look at Thuvia. Let's learn a bit deeper as we see their kind of flag here. Now, this is an image of Marie. So, this is just one of the buildings in Marie. But if we look at Thuvia and their history, it goes back very old, to the Age of Destiny. A very, very long time ago. So if you're unaware of the Age of Destiny is this time that's getting out of the Age of Darkness. It's basically, we're emerging from everything that happened post the, we've gone post the Age of Darkness, and then there's the Age of, we're out of that time period. There's a little bit of time period in between there, but this is like, the world's finally recovered. That's what we're kind of going into that time period. Thuvia, it's a harsh place. It's a desert, mostly. So, what has this place got? You've got these Thuvian nomadic desert tribes. These tribes were just there in this region. But, eventually they formed a united front in negative 3250 AR. they formed what would become known as the Terratanian League, which was a conference of city-states built along the region's coastlines and rivers that these tribes united into. So basically, they settled in these rivers and coastlines, parts of these tribes, and made these places. So this league, along with the Jiskin Imperium to the west, played a crucial role in re-establishing civilization here in the Inner Sea region. These were the starts of civilization. Now we have to talk about ancient Osirian a little bit here. Now I've talked about modern Osirian, and I've said that I will really dive deeper into ancient Osirian on its own at some point in time, and I will. But they expanded westwards to these lands, where Terrakian League was. But rather than fight them at this point in time, they forged an alliance with the nomads of these areas. And in negative 2764, they got them to support them in their conflict against the Jiskins. Because basically, they were there, the Jiskins were there, this league, which was, a couple of city-states and a bunch of tribes were there, and so, mostly nomadic tribes. It's like, oh, hey, okay. It was during the height of this war, this conflict, with the Jiskin, that the Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues ventured into the desert of Thuvia, far from the League's reach, and constructed the House of Oblivion. Summoned an extraplanar entity known as Airman from Abaddon. Airman responded, bringing with him corrupted genie army known as Divs. Yay! In exchange for this House of Oblivion, Airman pledged support the Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues in the destruction of Jiskin, but also consolidating the Pharaoh's dominion over the other realms. With the forces of the Osirian and the Technical League, and the support of the Divs and Airmen, they defeated Jiskin Imperium in that same year. Now, in negative 3047 AR, the Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues was overthrown by his successor, the Song Pharaoh, and led to Airman's defeat and banishment back to Abaddon. But now, nonetheless, the central desert of Thuvia has remained home to the Div there, and the cultists that worship and work with them, the Usuji. Osij. To this very day. So there's, horrible Divs and Usij cultists in the middle of the desert. Yay! Now, with Jiskin defeated, the Terrakian League was basically a vassal state of Osirian allies, effectively. They didn't really have a lot of power. They had worked with them, fighting with them. But this came to an end sometime later in negative 1452 AR, when basically Osirian forces raised a few of the city-states and absorbed the rest of them into the empire, giving this province the name Thuvia. It was roughly around this time, though, that Osirian once declined again, because Operia rises in power, declines, the Osirian, it's been over time here. So, about 600 years later, after the violent control of it, it abandoned the province entirely, seemingly by default, when basically the Osirian government did not replace the Thuvia's governor when he was assassinated in negative 841. So, Thuvia fell back to self-rule, barbarism, and basically disappeared from history for nearly 2 millennia. It might have remained that way. That basically the city-states would have been on their own, the tribes would have been all their own, they just would have been everybody would have been on their own dealing with this area of anarchy. Things changed. In 1140 AR, an alchemist in Marab, the city-state, named Artokus Kirin, discovered the Sun Orchid Elixir. He discovered, with taking Sun Orchids, well, we'll talk about this actually in a minute. But he discovered the elixir's ability to reverse aging. And this attracted foreign powers instantaneously, having this discovered. Because the Sun Orchids are scarce and can mainly be found in the div-infested regions of the nation in those deserts. Well, it's hard to get them. It was hard to manufacture this. So foreign nations were drawing up plans to invade Mareb and basically get control of the elixir. So Mareb did something smart. The 4 other city-states in this region, they came to them. They basically offered them equal shares in the elixir for return for protection against foreign invasion. They're like, we will share with you this. because we are all of this area if we work together against invasion. And they accept it. And so these city-states, who are still very individualistic, united on a single nation known as Thuvia in 1142 AR. They agreed only 7 vials would be created each year. 1 vial would be consumed by Artocus himself, and the other 6 would be auctioned off by each city and would rotate each year. Basically, the Thuvians decided that they would sell the elixir only to foreigners. Keeping the alchemists who could create them alive, great. Other than that, they did worry that postponing judgment and death would eventually incur the wrath of the goddess Pharasma. So they're like, we'll sell it. Who uses it? Up to them. If you want to piss off Pharasma, up to you. We're only selling it. So yeah. And this system has remained stable ever since. Basically, they're just like, you know what? Yeah, and again, the 5 city-states rotate each year that they sell it. So it's, Mareb sells it this year, the next one sells it this year, and they kind of do that, each selling those 6 and getting the money into their coffers. And that system has remained in place. And the amount of money they get from auctioning off, big. So foreign powers no longer went to war, they bid for it. And so, Thuvia, a barren, inhospitable desert, got rich. Yeah! They got money! Whole lot of money. So here is a map of Thuvia, showing its 5 main city-states and the barrier wall. As you can see, they're all along the rivers and barriers. So yes, the Inner Seas to the north, Osirian east, barrier wall to the south, Rahadum to the west. It's got 2 islands, the Wyvern's Roost and Glasswall Island. But the place is mainly desert with 2 rivers at the edges. The Junia River on the east, the border with Siren, and the Thunavar River rises along the barrier wall and roughly flows in direction until it meets the Uta River. And then Uta reaches the Inner Sea. But yeah, and of course the center of the desert, an ancient horrible pyramid and deadly gives and, maybe some nomads who are trying to make their way out there. Let's talk about each of the city-states just a little bit, because we do have some information about them. We'll end with Mareb, of course, because it's the largest city and basically the capital. So Aspenthar. It's the 2nd largest city. It's ambitious, it's kind of martial. Its current ruler is Prince Zinlo. And it is, of course, a port city. And it's the 2nd port city on the Inner Sea after Mareb. It's a little more dour than the capital. There's been a decree of martial trading is mandatory for all citizens. There's this idea that maybe he wants to invade some of the other city-states or attempt to kidnap the alchemist who creates the Sun Orchid Elixir, but hard to say. So, yeah. It was evasion of this city-state and capturing of a lot of people that gave the title of Hurricane King to Cirrus Wolf, a free captain, in 47 AR. Wolf was eventually captured by some privateers and the Packmasters of Capatesh and sentenced to death in the harbor here. So, Apenthar's representatives tend to negotiate with wild chieftains of the deep desert and the water lords. Some think he might be wanting to rob the Sun Caravan of one of the other city-states, but he does sell them every 5 years. Alright. Now let's talk about 2nd city-state, Dewar. They attempt to live in harmony with the desert, located close to the source of the Thunavar River. It's the 4th largest of the allied city-states in Thuvia. It's on the barrier walls of the headwaters. Its ruler is Karin, defender of Dunwar. It has a large temple to Gozareth, has many windmills that power the industry here. And yeah. People here have little interest in what the other cities-states of Thuvia do. They just live in harmony with the desert is. It's a great place to find a desert guide. A circle of desert druids live close to the city with a reputation of being good allies and bad enemies. And they actually have, unlike the monarchy of the previous city-state, a democratic council that rules them. So this small place here, kind of at the base of the mountains, at the headwaters of this river, exists. Lamarsar is known for its artisans and performers, and is on the Juria River. It's got a monarchy with Queen Zamiri at charge of it. It is the third of all the cities in size. Zamari is known for her clever diplomacy. So, whenever there's need for diplomacy for the entire nation, she's called upon. The city itself is known for its performers, artisans, hedonists in general. It's a popular tourist place all year round, regardless of what's going on in the Sun Orchid. There's always music in the air, artists that are performing whatever place it is, and currently, well-known artists from everywhere will kind of show up, especially when the city's hosting the sale of the Sun Orchid Elixir. Its notable buildings is the Serene Spiral, its majestic temple Pharasma, which the alchemist did visit with his familiar once to meet a Morginia named Tassoff. Morginia being a servant of Pharasma. So it's thought that perhaps he kind of made a deal with Pharasma, so he's kind of left off the chopping block, you know? Kind of that's the idea. Visited there, met with a representative for Pharasma, kind of smoothed things out a little bit. Hey, you know, I'm going to technically kind of be immortal, but I'm doing stuff for my nation, you know, kind of. When they sell the elixirs, it typically guards the shipments with numerous decoy caravans to confuse would-be thieves. Of course, then, we have Shao, the smallest of all of those, but the most proficient with magic. With a democratic collective, and their ruler, current one, Zrillia. It's in a barren south of the country. It's close to the citadel of the alchemist, but lacking the natural resources. It was ruled by the Emir guilds until recently. It's known for their magical talents. They revere Nethys as their patron deity, and they use magic to fight their harsh environment. This city has taken to using teleportation magic to transport the elixir. Because it's not completely reliable, it has been avoided in the past. The last two shipments have been lost through apparent teleportation accidents. And this did damage the Emir Guild's standing, which led to being replaced by Zrillia, daughter of Prince Zinlo of Asper. Zrillia has not shown any signs of placing the city under the family's rule, instead dissolving the monarchy, hardening guilds, and installing democratic rule of the city. So, hey, that prince over in Aspither, his daughter was just like, no. Monarchy gone, I'm in here now. We're putting in democratic rule in the city. You know, you can elect me for now. But yeah. Interesting thing to do for someone who's descended from monarchy. The center of the city is Scroll Spire, a magical university built on the entrance to an ancient Terrakian library well. It does make it vulnerable to attacks by the nomadic water lords who dwell in the desert in the southern Thuvia. And if they get attacked, the inhabitants seek shelter behind the Scroll Spire's walls. Now we have to finish up with the last city, the largest of the cities, Merab. It's the closest thing to a capital they have. Epidus, patron of Merab, is the current ruler, and has adopted Sarenrae as his patron deity, whose temple, the Redeemed Sun, is the largest temple to the Dawnflower in the entire country. Of course, it's the birthplace of the great alchemist, Arcodus Kirin. It's renowned for still being home of some of the greatest alchemists in Grund, actually. And the discovery of the elixir has led foreign powers to constantly threaten the place and, form the nation of Thuvia. It's a big port here, and it is twice the size of the next largest city-state in Thuvia. Its power is still tied with them. It's just because of all of them having a lot of money, and their government is elected leader. a mayor. So, yeah. Oedipus, patron of Merab, is elected. As a mayor they elect to lead the entire city. Interestingly enough. They transported the elixir with heavily armed caravans. Unusual for the Inner Sea region, the street lighting is alchemical, giving off a blue light. Though the eternal flame at the summit of the Temple of Redeeming Sun also gives off a lot of light. So while a lot of other major cities might have simple lights or magical lights, they have alchemical lights. As of course, Merab is built on the Path of Salt, a coastal trade route that connects the city with settlements to the west. The flowing market is the center of trade of alchemical wares not seen in other Thuvian cities. And it is also at least home to one representative of the Terad, a witch-weird trade consortium. And that's Thuvia! Now the last thing we can talk about is, of course, yes, what I've mentioned here. Each of these city-states has its own governments. We have the two democratic places, the Merab, who's sort of democratic but only with a mayor, and the two monarchies. Still, Queen Zamir, as I said, is the big diplomat they call on if there's other deals with other nations and negotiations like that. Now, we have to talk a little bit about their economy, and of course, in this, I have to dive into what the hell is this Sun Orchid Elixir? Because this desert place doesn't really do anything other than sell this. I'm not gonna lie. This one thing here holds their economy in check completely. It really is what keeps them going. So, the Sun Orchid. It starts with that. As I said, it's in those deserts and dunes in the center of the place. It's rare, even there. It's a dangerous area with divs, water lords, and all that kind of thing. But if you can find a Sun Orchid, single Sun Orchid would sell for around 500 gold pieces. Because it's not automatic immortality. It's one part of the elixir. One ingredient. A major and rare one. But still, one flower, 500. And then we talk about the elixir, which again, it just puts off the aging process, restoring a bit of your youth. Of course, Kieran the alchemist is still alive. Theoretically, he hasn't been seen in a lifetime, but every year, 6 elixirs leave his place. It's known that it's very dangerous to make this. Each vial takes at least a month to manufacture. Very difficult, very dangerous. The key ingredient, of course, is the Sun Orchid flower. Other things, unknown. And, of course, water lords will compete with orchid hunters to get this. Effectively, what the elixir does is it transforms you to youthful age of your choosing. You're in perfect health, regardless of your drinker's state of health when they originally were at age. Physical and mental imperfections at the processed at the time they consumed are immediately erased. And from that moment on, you begin to age naturally, and all memories are retained. So basically, it reverses your aging process a little bit towards your youth, and then it starts going forward again. It subtracts time from you. It does mean you eventually will have to imbibe more, especially if you're going to try for immortality. So this is Thuvia's global influence, Thuvia's money, its entire thing, and certainly speaking, it's a big party. Each year, you go to one of the city-states because it's getting visitors twice a decade to that city-state. Merchants, entertainers, they accommodate foreign bidders and the and people that come there. They have their own defenses. They have magical military power to protect the elixir and the sail from external forces. There are grand palaces, extensive irrigation projects, universities, theaters, all funded by the elixir. but the majority of Thuvians aren't really involved directly. Most of them are just traditional. Herding flocks in a nomadic fashion, mining valuable ores, salt, engaging in trade with merchant caravans, cultivating the few fertile lands in the desert. That's your average Thuvian. Which then brings us to Thuvian society we have to talk about a little bit here. To finish up. Which is actually a building in sun-swept architecture. The glass walls invoking petals of the Sun Orchid. So yes, while this economy evolves around each year which city is going to have the elixir and going to have the auction, it kind of like goes to this cycle that way. But nonetheless, the people are just normally there anyway. At least in the cities. Outside the cities, into the lands of Thuvia, well, is desert tribes. They cluster around various oases, where they pursue their herding, ore mining, salt gathering. A lot of these tribes are actually controlled by local warlords, known as waterlords. Many of which are a little bit better than bandits. So unfortunately, that's where the waterlords come into. Dangerous, effectively bandits. Now, the four main deities that do appear are basically the patron gods of the different city-states. Gozareth is worshipped in Duanar, who live in harmony with nature. Nethys, of course, in Pashov. Pharasma's big, because it was a priestess of Pharasma who convinced the country's leaders to forego immortality. Basically, they're like, hey, that guy made a deal with us. You guys didn't. So, no. And Sarah Ray, of course, unhead of Morale. And then you got the dangerous CG, the cult of airmen who are found in the desert, who are a big religion too. You also find other people here. The Semenchi Hatfolk, or Uruns. The nomadic people that roam the remote and dangerous areas of Thuvia's deserts in these caravan trains. They are believed by many in the region to be divinely blessed by Beset, the cat-headed deity, and are also believed to ward against many of the desert's most dangerous evil spirits by their travels. And of course, then, the Divs are a major person here other than the humans, who, they made their home in the desert around the House of Oblivion, where their god once was when he was called to Oblivion before being banished back. And they still serve airmen, some of these linked to waterlords, and of course, many of them, of course, are connected to the cultists of the Siege. But there's Thuvia in a nutshell. As best as I can put it. A little bit more in depth in a nutshell. It's an interesting nation because it's one that is very different between the 5 city-states and the lands between. It's a place that might not exist in the way it does now without the Sun Orchid Elixir. It forms a nation, and one that's pretty decently powerful. Having nigh immortality at their fingertips is something many would go for. Plenty of people have drunken some elixir to enhance their lives, to increase their lives. And plenty are always looking out for it. That's why it's so expensive. That's why they have these auctions. But it also means there's so much money into these rich cities that they can put together these defenses for it and these situations that they're ready for it, for this elixir. That's not a perfect system. Outside of them selling it, for them it's a perfect system. It works great. They work great. So, it's interesting that I don't think we'll see a change in Thuvia anytime soon. He's falling over somewhere in this room. I blame a cat. But nonetheless, though, it'll probably continue what it's doing, selling the elixir, having the alchemist drink one every year. Well, again, he hasn't showed up in quite a while. He's at least still making it, but who knows how that's, millennia of immortality is affecting a former human mod. Wasn't really built for it the same way. Kitties. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, though, today. Remember, check out all my other stuff. If you want to look for tabletop stuff, I stream it live on Twitch on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, early to mid-afternoon. Saturdays is a bonus day, if I miss any of those other ones. Thursdays is my Pathfinder-related topic day. Everything gets up YouTube after, so if you don't need to join me live if you want to see this there. I do other gaming stuff over on Twitch, too. Other tabletop stuff, though, is Crimson Queen, my live play Pathfinder 1st Edition at the time of this. I've been checking that one out. We're doing it in a Corvosa adapted version of the Crimson Throne Adventure Path. And then Saturdays is discussing tabletop at 6. So that's at 9 p.m. on Saturdays. 6 on the evening on Saturdays, discussing tabletop. We talk about news of the week and more. Always recommend checking that out. Social media's linked below. Cat pictures, schedule updates, all that kind of stuff. And occasional random brain bombs. Alright, I'm going to get going. I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Helped learn a bunch of stuff, had a great time, and watched the end. But until the next time I talk about New Nation, something else in Golarion, some other tabletop-related lore or information, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.